Kyle, do people like crashes at Jackson?
I think mine got the most replays on the big screen.
It really did. Which, you're still in second place to me, yard sailing in the crowd.
Because that plays every...
It still plays.
And that was how many years ago?
Dude, I was on a 09 or 08 Arctic Cat with a lot of power. And
that was a long time
very
ago.
untalented rider. That was me. Okay, here we go. All right, we are back. Hold on. We are back. I got Kyle Pulsifer. Kyle, do you notice anything different about the setting here?
We've got a different tablecloth here.
Kyle Pulsifer, you earned the Wide Open Podcast their first sponsor.
Nice.
Arctic FX comes to us and says, you know what? These things are pretty entertaining. We want to be a part of them. We're going to send you a tablecloth.
Sweet.
So we got, we've been really good friends with Jordan at Arctic FX. Actually, Jordan, so any of you guys who know Jordan from Arctic FX, he's the owner. He wrapped like my very first snowmobile, very first tour back in the Arctic Cat M days. So Jordan has been along for the entire ride of BBA, and I love you, Jordan. Love all the. So how many wraps is that he has put together for the BBA fleet over the year? It's in the hundreds because we've had a lot of snowmobiles over the years. So, Jordan, we appreciate the support, appreciate everything you've done for this industry. Arctic FX is really, like, there wasn't a thing of wrapped snowmobiles back in the day, was there? And we do now. We wrap them now. I know, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, you put decals all over them. All you guys up in Canada, you know what I'm talking about.
My first mountain sled was a 2016, so.
Ow. Freaking pup. All right, anyway, guys, we're back. We've got a really exciting one today. It is part 2 of Kyle Pulsifer's adventures of the Jackson Hole Hill Climb. Tons of awesome comments and fun feedback from our first one. Obviously, everyone loved to see the behind the scenes of you wadding yourself, almost killing yourself into that tree.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. I should really get Blake some. I got a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I could probably get a lot of stuff from people. Maybe this is a good advertisement. If you guys have something from Jackson, who should they send it to? Because I should do a little video.
Don't send it to me. I am 500 emails deep right now.
Yeah, mine's
All right, you're worse. Blake, what's your email?
3,409.
Just get it to us somehow. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Send it to Ryan at chrisburandt.com.
Because it was so crazy that week.
Ryan just sits there, doesn't do anything.
I was getting texts and messages with all these cool videos and stuff, and I was just so busy that I probably missed and lost a lot of cool stuff. And then I ran over my phone this summer, and that little notification that comes up every 5 minutes about how you're out of iCloud space or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never backed it up, so I lost everything.
Dang it. All right, so we'll do just a quick recap because hopefully you're listening to part 2 because you listened to part 1 and you said, well, okay, now what happens? Mm-hmm. So Jackson isn't just where you throw a sled in the back of your truck and go up the hill climb and win.
No, that doesn't happen like that.
Right? So we talked a lot about the preparation and all the stuff that goes into it before we even got to Jackson, right? We had a whole hour talking about the trials and tribulations and
trying to put it all together in 6 days.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where I wanted to start and where we left off was, because we kind of breezed through it, was so it is now like
we should start with just like driving into Jackson.
All right, hold on. We're not quite to Jackson yet.
We're not yet.
Okay. So, and this is the one that I like, right?
Yeah.
And actually, you got to do this yesterday a little bit, right?
Yep.
Dude, I'm not jealous because you deserve it because you work your ass off here, but you got to go ride some pretty cool snowmobiles yesterday with the Polaris team, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, to say I was excited to when everybody can have some stuff, it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, that's another topic, another day. But but that brings me back. So it is like it's crunch time. We've got all the big hitters. You got Keith Curtis and Luke Rainey and the Thomas boys, and we got everybody. And the factory Polaris trailer with all the guys, all the the race support and everything is there. And you know, I love that aspect. You know, growing up as a kid, you know, you think about, man, what would it be like to work for Polaris? And what if I, you know, looking back then, it was snowcross, right? Being a factory racer and having the semi and, you know, all of that stuff. And, you know, here's Kyle Pulsiver, never even ridden, a hill climb, you know.
Got a ratty old snowmobile, and these guys are pulling up in their 60-foot trailers with 10 of them, and I mean, they're decked out. They're there for a reason. And
so, you know, the snowmobile, the racing game has changed a lot. It's no more like tuning carburetors and all of that stuff. We're doing everything on a computer now, right? So talk about like what that experience was, and you know what it's like walking in the trailer, and I because I love that part, and I hope the listeners do too.
Yeah, and so. I mean, we showed up on a location where all of us were kind of together, and the biggest thing is kind of just take the sleds out first and make sure. I mean, make sure they're like, you can feel a sled when it's running good, or if there's something wrong with it. Just making sure there's nothing wrong with them, and then we're hooking up data loggers and looking at the data and seeing where we're at fueling wise, if we can get her a little hotter. Darren uses the term, we'll turn up the fuel economy.
Which means lean it down, make more power.
Down. So finding that line of not going too far and having problems at the race, but making it as fast and, I mean, crazy as possible. And all these guys, I mean, they've got 4 sleds apiece usually to get, so they're scrambling. Like they get one dialed and they're already on to the next one, trying to get that one dialed, and they race at different elevations. Stuff can happen to snowmobiles. I mean, and Jackson's probably a lot different than their other races where it's a little bit longer, maybe a little bit icier. They're running in, they're probably going to get a little hotter, stuff like that. So, and I think just from the they're able to take data from the past years and what worked before, and like kind of just drawing patterns, and I mean, lots of common sense, kind of just thinking through everything. And like we're trying, like even like getting my sled dialed in, like we were still swapping, I mean, springs on my rear shock and stuff because I was wheeling a little bit too much. And I mean, it was like, it's just, I don't know.
It's a little nerve-wracking, right? Making these so you spent the last 3 days, right?
Getting
comfortable, and then you come, and then the guys are like, "I'm going to give you more power. We need you to turn a little bit more. I'm going to change this, and then go to Jackson with no practice." Which we're gonna.
I'm a little bit of a believer in too. Like, there's a fine line, and each rider is probably different on what they can handle, but there's a fine line on power that's usable and power that's gonna hurt you. And I've always like growing up through motocross, watching kids on 125s beat kids on 450s, and it is strictly the only possible way to do that is using momentum and being smooth. Yeah. Where like, I mean, you can have all the power in the world. It comes down to the rider at the end of the day. I mean, you need something that runs good, and it's got like. When you get up in that top section, power to get, like, I mean, you can make up some time with power in the bottom and at the top. The middle, I would say, is a lot more based on the rider and just strictly, I mean, finesse and
well, I think that's what's funny.
Trying to avoid mistakes.
That's what's funny is, you know, I raced Jackson for, I think, 3 years, and I never made it up on a turbo, but I made it up every year on a 600.
Yeah,
because I could actually ride it. I was an idiot on the turbo. I was like, I'm going to set the world record. Yada, yada, yada. Here I am in the crowd.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Back to the story. So you have one sled. Everyone's got like 19 snowmobiles, and everyone's running around. You end up getting your sled into a happy place, and then you're kind of helping the other racers a little bit.
Yeah, I get my sled into a happy place, learn that I have a rip track, and then obviously with a rip track, you run the risk of that thing opening up on the windows and smacking coolers. So I park it. We took a couple of hours to figure out a plan for what I needed to do to get a track and trying to track one down. No pun intended.
Got that.
But so tracked down a track and had a plan. So I parked my sled, and then I started helping some other guys work on their stuff. And Andy was pretty dialed, honestly, because it's really, that's where he tests and rides. It's a lot of the same elevations. But there were some other guys that were having some troubles and stuff like that. So I was helping out and in the trailer and just kind of learning as much as I could. But everybody, it went really good. Everybody was pretty dialed.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Using past history and notes and but still what you're hoping for is no failure, right?
Yeah.
And you never want to have to, you're trying to eliminate as many liabilities or possibilities of not, you're talking about tenths of a second at Jackson, which is insane to me, right?
Yeah.
So no bobbles, flawless sleds, and then it comes down to the rider, right?
Well, any type of flaw at the wrong moment too can totally serve anyone.
Yeah.
Like you come into one of them faces or around one of them corners and you have a delay, it's the end of your run.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
There's no.
Okay, so our sleds are in good shape except yours again. When we talked about this in the last one, you ended up having to go get a track and borrow another favor and all that.
Yeah,
right?
I leave the test day, and the plan is obviously you need to be in Jackson the next morning to get into the pits.
Yeah.
So tracks, I needed to be there to get into the pits, and then I was going to run across town to where this track was going to be delivered, come back
on the airplane.
Yeah, coming in on the airplane. Darren is he's like, yep, it'll be there tomorrow morning. And I'm like, he calls somebody back in Rosso, and he said, hey, go run out to the track pile and see if we got this. And then the guy calls back, yep, we got one. Okay, get it on a plane. We need it at Jackson tomorrow morning. I'll text you the address. And I'm like, how does that even work? But I'm just, super appreciative of that. And I'm just crossing my fingers. I don't even know what I'm going to do if that doesn't show up.
Yeah.
And Keith, I think, was he's like, if it doesn't work out, he's like, we could pull the track off my practice sled or do something like that. And Andy said the same thing. He's like, we'll figure something out if we need to. Because stockers qualify Friday.
Yeah.
And then mod qualifying Saturday, and then finals are Sunday. So there's a little bit of, you can work with some stuff. Not ideal, but so. The next morning, I don't know the program. I've never even been to one of these races before, and they're just park down at the fairgrounds, and they'll pull you into the pits. So I'm down there the next morning. Everybody else kind of knows the program, and I'm just standing around, parked in there, and I just waiting around, and they're kind of everybody that's been there or is there has kind of been there and knows the program, and it's a little bit unknown if you're doing it right, or there's people walking around that look like they know what they're doing, and you don't really know if you should be doing something or what, and you sit around for a couple hours before they park you. And finally got parked, and then drive across town to find this track, get the track, hustle back, because Thursday their amateurs are qualifying, and then their finals, I think, are Friday. So amateurs are qualifying Thursday. Get back, go to, then Andy comes over as I get the track, and he brings over a tool, a gauge to cut it, and kind of to walk me through how to do it. And I show him the screws that I got, and he's like, those aren't going to work. And they were finer threaded traction screws. He's like, I'll go find you some screws. And he went to everybody and got a half bag of screws from everybody, and different colors and different brands and stuff. So he comes back with the screws, and I had actually, it was kind of cool too, my mom, dad, and brother came out, and they've really never been a part of any of my snowmobiling, really. So it was cool to have them out. And so me, my dad, my brother, Andy, Sam Peterson came in, and we're all each one of us is either cutting, putting in screws, twisting the track or holding the track. And we literally did it in a half hour or 45 minutes,
Wow.
Cut and screwed, threw the track in, got everything dialed in, lined it up, track tension, and then by then it was towards the end of the day, watched the amateurs a little bit, and then Friday I actually ended up gaining a class.
Oh.
And getting to run a stock 900 class. So then Toby Shepard, I didn't have a sled. Toby's like, you can ride mine. I was like,
A rental? Hell yeah.
a rental sled?
At Jackson? It's like the
Sure.
best kind.
So the qualifying for stock classes and improved is to the first catwalk at Jackson, which is the least technical part of the track. It's kind of just S-curvy, super fast, super rough, bumpy. And so I'm watching qualifying, trying to learn what I need to do.
Yep.
And I end up, so the sled I haven't even started.
You've never
before.
even ridden
Never
the
even
snow,
started
though.
it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's give this a shot. And pull up on the starting line, and it was super icy that day. Super icy. And, like, the biggest thing everybody was telling me was, don't keep it on two skis. Keep it on two skis. And they're like, you'll just spin.
You'll
if you
spin
go,
out.
yeah, they're like, you'll just spin if you try to put it on edge, which is pretty unfamiliar for me. Like doing the 2 foot, like
Trying
over
to
the
turn.
front ski, try to get that thing to turn. And I actually, like looking back at it and looking at where my times were, I had and it's super tight. Like what? So I think they take there's a bunch of racks of 25 for each class. And out of the 25, I think the top 8 or 6 or something transfer
It
to finals.
It depends how many people in the class, but like 900 stock, there's a lot in there. They're probably taking the top 10, right?
Yeah, and that's what it was.
Or 8 to 10.
8 to 10 or something to come up with a final bracket.
Yeah.
And so to get in this final bracket,
dude.
I was like 20 out of my bracket, which was like 25. I was like 23rd or something. So looking at all the times, like the top or the people that were transferring were all within, I mean, like 6 seconds probably, which the top 6 were all within like 3 seconds. Like, so it's like, well, it's tough because it's like there's a really fine line. Like you could tell the guys that were going in there just wide open were just slipping, sliding, and it didn't work. And then there was like people that were maybe holding back a little bit that were going and then there was people that were holding back probably too much, being too conservative. But like there was a really fine. That's the thing with that. It's the racing that I've done before, like in motocross. There's not like I don't know. I feel like there's not a finesse line. There is to where if you're crashing, obviously you're not going to be winning. But like it's weird. There's like to the conditions you couldn't push too hard. Or it'd be slow. Yeah. So
you could overdrive stuff and lose traction. And one bobble in that stock qualifying and you just might as well turn around.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
You got to be perfect.
That's why I never even made it to the first catwalk. I'd always screw up and just head on down. I sucked at stock qualifying. It was so hard because you bobble one time and you lost your opportunity.
Yeah. And like Brandon Tittenser comes up to me and he kind of gave me a rundown and he was like, and he was the one that mainly told me, and like everybody was talking about it, but like keep it on 2 skis. He's like, I know you'll come into a corner and you'll think you need to be wrong foot forward and get that thing on edge, and he's like, it won't work. Like especially the last run to the catwalk was super slippery. You could just see, people were like pinned. You could hear sleds just pinned, and they're like barely making it to the catwalk, and it's not even that. It's the steepest part, but it's not that steep. Yeah. So I'm looking at all that and picking out some lines because the course is really breaking down now, and because that's towards the end once you get up to like the 900 qualifying and So was I in 900 stock or 1,000 stock? I think it was 900 stock.
Yeah.
Anyway, my run's up. I pull up on the top of the thing and like I didn't know when to pull up there. Luckily Darren was with me and he warms up my sled and telling me what to do. He's like, pull up there. He'll tell you when you can go. So I pull up there and like looking around, there's a whole bunch of people. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird. I've never had a bunch of people watch for one line or whatever. And you get up on top, and they're like, okay, you're good to go. Good luck. And
the butterflies right there a little bit.
Honestly, I wasn't. I was worried about it a little bit, but I wasn't nervous. I don't know. It was a little bit different having the people there, but wasn't super nervous. And I come around, and there's this tabletop at the timing lights. And everybody's like, there's a couple guys on short track 600s that were jumping it. And one guy, like, hit it on a mountain sled and, literally coasted through the timing lights and broke everything. I don't know who it was. It was funny. It wasn't funny, but it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So no one was hitting that because you'd get a better drive off the landing. Like, if you roll the tabletop and drive down the landing, the timing lights are actually in the bottom. So come through the timing lights, and like it was going really good. Like I had a really good line through the arches and then up the hill. And I had it was like a long sweeper to the right with a bunch of holes in it. And I was up, there was like a little line starting right up by the flags that I'd watched a couple of guys take. And that's what I wanted to take, because if there was people that were dropping the ski in the holes, obviously, and that was working, but it was getting slower. And then there was people pounding right through the holes, which was slow. And I was on the inside of them big holes, and I had both feet on the right running board, and I had a clean pass all the way up in there. I didn't have to let off. And I'm just coming to where it was like I needed to get around another flag, so I needed to get further right. And that track washed out where I maybe should have started to back out of the throttle or something. And it was right where that line was, like right on top of them bumps, and I had just the right edge of the track up on top.
Yep.
And that track slid and dropped down and literally just dropped and squared up one of them bumps, like right in the bottom. The skid dropped all the way to the bottom of the hole. And
Superman Kyle Polster.
It high-sided or like lifted that back end way up, and my feet came off the running boards. Let's see if we can find that clip. My feet come off the running boards, and they're literally above my head. I'm looking straight down at the dash. And luckily, I kept it pinned, and somehow I stayed on it. But my feet dropped back down. Now I'm obviously going straight. I'm not making that right-hand sweeper. I have to totally get out of the throttle. I have to turn right, get around that flag. Then I have to, which was another thing that's really weird about that racing. Like, when lines push you certain ways in the trees, you let them do it, and you just go around the tree on the left, even though you were planning on the right, plan B, right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't work, plan A didn't work. Let's just go to plan B. There, it's like plan A or you lose.
Yeah.
So I have to lock up the brakes, turn right, lock up the brakes, turn left around the flag, and now I'm going again. And I get going again, make the next. I kind of at that point I'm like, that was so slow. There's not a chance. And I get around, and I get to that last turn, sharp left turn to go up the hill, right at the timing lights, the top timing lights. And I come around that corner, and that was the same thing. I got that left ski down in the trench, come around the corner, and that sled slid on me a little bit, and I pinned it. And I, looking back at it, I can remember every second of this line still, like every one of them. And I pin it, and I'm just like, just spinning. And I should have just backed out of it, and I'm like all the way back on the running boards, pulling back as hard as I can. And it was doing that like transfer onto the back, but this shock was stiff, so it'd lift that front track shock, and then it'd just spin you out again. And I made it up to the timing lights, and I was like, holy crap, that was embarrassing. That was terrible. And I actually come back down around, I still didn't know what to do, and I go over to the person at the catwalk, and they're like, put your ski brakes on. I'm like, okay, thanks. Where do I go? Because you go down and you get to, I'm like, do I need to stop down there, or what do I need to do? You pull down there, and they each class, they kind of pick something different to tech.
Oh.
I think that time, I don't think they looked over much other, because it's just stock classes, and it was just qualifying. They kind of just looked over to make sure you have all your stuff and snow flap and tether and whatnot. And so I pull back down to the pits, and the guys, Darren came over to me right away, and he's like, that was really good. And I was like, did you see me just hit the back of my head with my feet? And he's like, yeah, you screwed that up, but it was pretty good. And I think I was 2 seconds off of what was the transfer spot.
Well, what got you in? Yeah.
Which I'm really thankful to have that class, just to kind of because I didn't even plan on having it. I didn't plan on really being competitive at it. Sled that I'd never rode. But it was really good to have that class, just to get a feel for what it was and what it was like, and to look at the hill from the track, not from the chairlift. It's totally different. And so getting that class, getting that look at the hill, even though I didn't make it in 900 stock, I wanted to, obviously, but it was cool to kind of see that line too. I think I rode it pretty good, but and then to be 2 seconds off, I feel like I lost more than 2 seconds having to stop and turn around that flag like that. So,
so it gave you a little confidence, even though you didn't get through. Right?
Yeah,
and it gave you some seat time, and so that's Friday. That was Friday.
Yep.
Stock qualifying. Okay. So now you haven't ridden your sled since you put the track on and all of that, right?
Well, yeah, no, I haven't. And so I actually ran up after that race. I think I ran up to ride it, just to take it for a spin to make sure everything's, running right. There's no vibrations and stuff like that. So I do, and then just to see how different that track is.
Yep.
So I run up, I think after that race, my stock day, and rode the sled. Everything worked good. Sled ran great. Everything. So now Saturday's the big day. They open the top of the hill.
Yep.
And that mod qualifying goes to the top. Growing up watching all these crash videos, and I grew up watching
my highlight reel,
watching a ton of Jackson videos. And I actually, the first year I watched Jackson, I only watched it once. I went there 16-17, the winter 16-17 by myself before I came down here to ride with you.
It was right before.
Yeah, 2 days before.
Yep.
And I went up there to watch, and I was by myself, and it was a year that it was 45 degrees the day before, and Sunday morning came for finals, and it was glare ice until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I don't think anybody made it over the hill until 11 o'clock.
Wow.
And
Just
sleds
carnage.
There was Arctic cats literally with tunnels, the rear tunnels getting ripped off them.
Yeah, I remember. It was so painful to watch.
Because the amount of work in those snowmobiles.
Yeah.
And just to get ragdolled.
And to know, and this isn't about this year weekend there, but we've seen Jackson at that point where in the bottom of the gate, you can't make it. It's trying to go get a high mark before you have to jump off your snowmobile so you don't die and watch your sled get totaled. Yeah. Literally, that was the mentality. And I saw a few racers literally go to the first catwalk and pull off and go down. And I'm like, I respect that. It's like there's so much work that goes into it, but I also respect the guy that says, F it. I'm going. Yeah. I'm trying. I had respect for both there. And that was a year that, you literally, I had a tear watching all of these racers who sacrificed all this stuff and money and time and to watch their sleds. And it wasn't because they screwed up. It was the conditions. Yeah. Right?
You couldn't walk on the hill. Yeah. I went up, I rode the chairlift up right away in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, rode the chairlift up. And people that were trying to walk down the fence on the sides were yard sailing.
Yeah.
The hill help couldn't even stand on the hill, let alone grab a ski. Oh. The hill help was you couldn't kick your heels in to have something to stand. The hill's so steep, you need something to stand on.
Yeah.
And the hill help couldn't even kick their heels into the hill to stand there. So the officials were pulling hill help off, and they're if the sled stops, then go help them tip it up right. But don't
try to stop
it.
Can't.
You can't. And you can't even, run across the hill. You can't do anything. So another part of this is the hill is nasty. So we're back to the race this year.
Okay.
And the hill is nasty. And we, I'm talking, I think I rode the chairlift with.
Saturday morning?
I rode the chairlift a ton. Friday because at the end of Friday, the amateurs and semi-pros final, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we watched.
So they got to go up to the top.
That's the first time the top of the hill opens up. And the top of the hill opens up, and they're finaling, and I rode the chairlift up. I made laps all afternoon with Andy and Keith and Sam Peterson, and took laps with those guys on the chair, and I'm just looking at the hill. I'm like, God, this looks. It's nasty. There's not much snow up here. This is nasty.
And this is before all the holes and everything.
Yeah, it's just 10 people have been over the hill, and it's 2 ice, rocks, dirt, and grass. Immediately, there was moguls on the hill, and that was the only snow.
Yeah.
So, I was Keith and Andy and all them guys are even this is the nastiest I've ever seen this hill. And I'm like, oh, perfect.
Oh,
great.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I was hoping
you'd say that.
First one. Yeah.
And so understanding that and looking at it, and the biggest thing was just trying to look for those lines that still had snow on it. Cause when there's ice on rocks, it's not traction.
No.
And it's too steep to not have traction. So you're looking for lines with snow or certain parts of the hill where you need to get drives off it to get
through
to
those
the next
sections.
part of the snow, and whether you pound straight through the ice and the rocks or you try to go over them snow moguls, or if they're going to screw you or what's going to happen. And it was cool listening. Those guys are, that's what they do. And listening to their opinions and what they do and what they were thinking of the hill. And like everybody's kind of varies a little bit, but everybody's looking for the same thing. Like whether or not what decision they make on what line they want to pick and like what looks best to them varied, but they all had the same idea. And I mean, so going into Friday, like the hill got nasty, like some guys barely made it. I mean, there wasn't that many people that made it over at all.
Yep.
And this is the best shape the top of the hill is going to be in. So Saturday morning opens up. They went from having a pretty straight top section to turning us down right in the rock gardens. They make us pretty much stop, come across in the rock gardens, and that's like the steepest part of the hill. That's what they call it. They call it the rock gardens. And then a left-hand turn straight up through the rocks. And so the classes start out Saturday, mod qualifying, going to the top. And I mean, the first few people, I mean, struggled big time. There kind of gets a groove in it, and then there's a period of good where a lot of people are going up the top, and then the track breaks down, and then very few people are going on the top. So all these classes have 25 people in it, and they randomly draw what order you're in. So there's a lot of chance and luck, and sometimes the track won't break down and be like fast until the last person. Sometimes the first few people have the fast track.
The
so
advantage.
it's tough there, and there's really nothing. I mean, it's kind of just luck, really, I think. There's nothing you can do about it. You don't know when they're going to move a gate. They might move a gate between classes, and then it went from a fast track to now it needs to build a line again, or you need to cross another line. And so we're getting closer and closer to the race, and it's like, God dang, I've been up and up here, like, watching all these races, because I had 2 classes to try to qualify for that day, and it was 900 mod and open mod. And they're at the end of the day. They're the last classes of the day. And, like, standing around all day, like, watching all these classes, and it's like normally it's like riding. Yeah. Right?
You're sitting.
And I'm sitting there watching and watching and watching and thinking and thinking and thinking, and it's just like, God dang, I just want to go up this thing. So finally, like, I don't know, what was it, 3, 4 o'clock, where it gets to, like, where 900 mod's up. So I take one last second lap on the chairlift, watching the hill again, come back down, get on the sled. They announce that 900 stock or 900 mod is up. They move a gate. And I'm like, well, that was pointless. I didn't even need to ride the chairlift. So they move a gate, like, pretty substantially in the rock gardens. They took that one where you had to turn hard right and then turn hard left and go through the rock gardens. They took that first gate where you had to turn hard right, and they put it way further up the hill and way farther left into just nastier junk.
Yeah, to make it even worse.
Yeah. And there was what gate number would have that been? Like, what would it be, 26 and 27?
Yeah.
I think that's what it was. So gate 26 now is way farther left and further up the hill, so it makes you have to almost drop a little bit back downhill to get around 28 and go up through the rock gardens. So the class starts out. It's really tough. Lots of people are struggling getting around because it was so steep above 27. They were really struggling to get that front end to drop because they brought so much speed into that corner trying to get that front end to drop around that gate. And, I mean, it finally, like, some people start to really, like, check up at 27. They really start slowing down, getting that front end drop to have a drive around 28 and get up through them rocks. So, same thing, same program. Darren comes up to me. He's like, we need to get your sled up there, get it warmed up. So he warms up on the jack stand, does whatever he does, tells you you're good to go, gives you a fist pump, tells you to have at her. So you get up on the starting line, then it's kind of like you're looking, there's a lot of people there on Saturday.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I was like 23. And what he told me before the race is, like, not many, because of that gate change, before that people were ripping. Like, up the top. Like, there was a ton of people going out the top. My class, that 900 mod, I think 4 or 5 people, and I was 23rd.
Yep.
4 or 5 people is it that made it out the top. So Darren's just like, dude, he's like,
calm down in the bottom.
He's like, calm down in the bottom. He's like, get to that first catwalk.
Yeah,
he's
take
like,
a breath.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And he's like, ride that thing out the top. You don't need to set any world records. This is qualifying. You don't need to win qualifying. It doesn't do you any good.
Yeah.
He's like, don't need to do anything crazy. Get out the top of that thing. Like, do what you do every day. Be smart. Don't let anything affect you. Focus on what you need to do. Be calm. Like, remember to breathe. Don't hold the brakes all the way up the hill. And just get out the top. It's all you need to do. He's like, it doesn't need to be fast. Just, put in a decent run. Don't try to be too slow again where you're going to spin out. But he's like, just be smooth, get out the top. Like, okay, yeah, sounds good. I'll just do that. So I pull up on the starting line. It's the same program. They announce who you are, whatnot, and, like, sponsors. And race achievements where I haven't even been to a snowmobile race in my life. Like when Keith Curtis is up, race achievements.
Oh,
wins.
it takes 12 minutes. Jesus, Keith.
But I'm like, so here I am again, just kind of, I don't know, collecting myself. Get the heart rate up before the race, and same thing. Go to take off, get over the tabletop, break the timing lights, hit the first banner, the first archway, and come through the banner. Sled lays down. Sled bogs. Just totally. I'm pinned to where I need to be going 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Sled lays down all the way through
sled
the archway.
has been perfect.
Hasn't bogged, hasn't deaded, hasn't sputtered, done a single thing all week, all season. Hasn't done anything wrong. I get through the and I'm bad with snowmobiles that don't work perfectly, because it gets in your head. You don't you get so used to being in front of when you pin it, you're leaning forward. You're ready for it. You know what I mean? You do things before the sled does them because you know what's going to happen. And when you don't have that, it's really hard to ride because it's in your head. So sled lays down. I have to back in and out of it 4 times to get the sled to go. It finally takes off, and I'm like, God dang it, are you kidding me? So I drive through the gates up to the first catwalk, basically. And my sleds, every time I back out of it, it's just sputtering. And I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. I get to the first catwalk, and I pin it, and it's just, 6,800 RPMs. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I get it was funny getting to that first catwalk and looking up. You would ride this chairlift, and you see all these lines, you see these gates. You're looking at it from the top. From the drone's view, a helicopter's view, you see all these lines.
And you're like, I'm going to go right here.
I'm going to do this, and then looking at it, the binoculars from the bottom, you're seeing all this stuff and what these riders are doing. You get to that first catwalk, and you're looking up the plane of that hill, and all you see are red and blue. And then you got to look for numbers because it's really easy to be at gate 26 and look at 28 and drive through it, but yet you miss 27. That's way to the left. And that was a big thing Andy said. He's like, don't miss gates. And everybody kind of gives you that advice, but they're like, don't miss any gates because then you take a mark there. Yeah.
And you got all the hill help, and you got the crowd over there.
I'm looking, and I get to that first catwalk, and I see a chairlift right by my ear, looking uphill, and the chairlift's interrupting flags. You can it's covering up flags. You see a billion people on the left. You got hill help scattered all over the hill. Different there's just colors everywhere. And, there's dirt and rocks, and the moguls are way bigger. Anyway, first catwalk, I'm like, okay, a deep breath, and I drive straight up to 27, really good. And that was that one where I swung hard left, and I get up on top of 27 and full counter steer and foot forward we teach every day.
Yep.
And I drop that front end, and I stop pretty much, come to a dead stop like we do on our downhill turns every day we practice with our groups.
Yep.
Drop that front end, and everybody, looking back at the videos I heard from the crowd, everybody's like, oh, like it was over. But I stopped perfect on snow.
Yep.
And there was a little rut wide of where everybody was pounding through the rocks and through the bumps. And I drove around that corner at 40.
Now hold on. This is what I love because I saw the video.
Mm-hmm.
This is it brought a tear to my eye of how proud I was of you. So here's what you do, right? You go up around that gate, foot forward, drop the front end down like we have done 9 million times with our clients on day one, right? And then you eyes up, take a step back on the running board to unweight that front end, and you're going to go around that corner and you're ready. I was like, well, we've done that a couple times.
Yeah. And the sled is still spitting and sputtering. So luckily though, right there, I got on the throttle, and when you're in a position like that, you're not at the mercy of trying to keep the sled on edge with throttle. When you take off, you can kind of let the sled do its thing, get that track spinning, put that track in the snow, and let it take off. So I get around 28, and 29's right at the top of the rocks.
Yep.
And I come wide in the snow.
In the snow.
And I crossed 29 with my right ski, wheelied over it and missed it by about that much. And I land in a side hill on right edge now, on dirt and ice. And luckily get on another pillow, and didn't set the world on fire. And get on pillows and drive right out the top. And
with your sled just
out the top. And I get up to the top catwalk, and I'm just it took me a second because I'm just
am I here?
Is that it?
Did I make it?
I'm so used to not like thinking about lines, right? Like your goal is to get to the top, and then you turn around and you do it again. Try to find a harder spot on it, or try to hit your same line, or do something like that. I get up to the top, and I was like, dang, now what? That was pretty cool. And I turn around and look, and you're like, I mean, town's just like way down there, and people are cheering and stuff, and that was awesome. I mean, I've never had, I don't know how many people cheering when you get to the top of a line.
Dude, I always cheer for you.
Normally you just tell me I took your mom's line or something.
Yeah, you're right.
But so I'm at the top, and I'm like, well, now what do I do? And I don't know his name, the announcer that's at the top that's doing interviews. Yeah. I shut off my sled, and he interviews me, and you had bet me $1 the day before.
I told you every time you make it up, that's $1.
It's $1. So I claimed that $1, and I don't know what I even he was asking me questions, and I'm like, I've never really had I don't know if this is a podium interview, but never had an interview like this before. So go through that. I mean, I was pumped. He turns the mic off, and he's like, nice work, dude. See you, because I still had open mod.
Yeah.
And he's like, see you up here in your next class. And I was like, yeah, I hope so. So I'm like, I turn around and go to walk to my sled, and I ask him, I'm like, where do I go? And he's like, there was this line out the top right to the chairlift, basically.
Yeah. And
like,
it's it's not like that line isn't that pretty either.
Oh no, there's literally people walking down it with their elbows on top of the trenches.
Yeah, I know. I remember that. So funny, like, so your recollection is identical to my first time making it up. Like, the hill is intimidating, right? And then you just get into that zone, and here you go. And I come around the second catwalk, and that year they had straightened it out a little bit, and I just remember like wheeling through stuff, and I'm like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I made it.
That's exactly
that wasn't that bad.
No.
And then, but same thing, I get there, and then they're like, okay, you just go up there, and I'm just like looking, I'm like, I think I'm going to wreck my sled right here. And it's such a cool feeling getting there. For one, I forgot to breathe. Like, so I get there, and they're trying to interview you, and I'm just like, give me a minute.
And that's what Sam told me too. He's like, you're going to get to the top, you're going to puke. You weren't going to take a breath the whole way up. And like, I got to the top, and I was like,
you were good.
I was fine. Yeah,
I was not.
Just another line, kind of.
Yeah.
So I get out the top, and I'm following these snowmobile tracks down through the woods and on these catwalks.
Yeah.
And get back down to the first catwalk, and everybody's kind of saying good job and stuff like that. And I knew, like, I had no idea what my time was or anything. I just knew that I think 11 people transferred out of that class because it was so big.
Yeah.
I just knew, like,
you're in.
I'm in because there was 2 people behind me. Only, I think, 5 had made it out.
Sweet.
So I was like, well, I'm in. So I don't really know what my time was, but it was good enough.
Yeah.
So I get back down to the pits, and like my dad was there and Darren was there, and they were pumped. And I was like, just gotta do it again. I'm already thinking. I'm like, as I'm coming down the track, I'm like looking in. I'm like, I just gotta do it again. I get down. I'm like, Darren's like, nice work. That was awesome. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, sled ran like shit. We gotta figure something out.
Yeah.
And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I was like 6,800 RPMs, popping and sputtering and like laying down. And he's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no. And we didn't even put a data logger on it. Normally we put a data logger on all the sleds going up in case they have problems. Yeah. And he's like, oh, that sucks. He's like, this thing's ran perfect all week. And I'm like, I know. So he looks
how much time do you have between your 2 classes now?
My next class. It's the next class.
Yeah. So now we're we're feeling good, right? You're pumped you made it, but now I'd be thinking like,
about the next class.
What is up with my sled? So what do you guys do to fix the sled?
He has some ideas. He looks at my fuel numbers. He looks at just some stuff. He looks, like, obviously on digital wrench you can pull codes. There was no codes. There was no nothing. All it was is he's like, we need to lean. He's like, if it was laying down, we need to lean it down.
Yeah.
So he pulls a bunch of fuel out of it. We look for boost leaks or something weird like that. Yeah. Everything looks perfect. Everything's in check and normal. So I was like, well, he's like, we don't have. He's like, you got to run it again. Like, he's like, hopefully, something was weird. Hopefully, it works this time. So, same thing with my open mod runs. Is I'm like dead last in the class, which I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I kind of enjoy that.
Good
the hill is so bad. Like up top, like it was not no one, but like very few out of each class, like 5% of the people were making it.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm dead last, and I'm like, well, perfect. I'll I'll know what I need to do, whether or not like
I got to charge the bottom or I don't have to.
Like, yeah. And that's what, like charging the bottom. It's like that's where you could use up a lot of energy. Where in the technical
I'd have
stuff,
to
you might not
stop
be
at
on
the
point.
first catwalk, get a drink of water, arm pump, calm down.
A nature valley maybe. But so like I'm going into this next run, same thing, dead last, watching my class, and I'm watching these guys. Now the track is super slippery. Like the snow, like because we're still staying left because they need to stay the right side of the hill for finals day.
Yeah.
So we're still on the left side of the hill, and it is broken down. Like there's moguls and walls and trenches. And that's it. And then, like, the only paths are literally dirt. There's no snow patches on it. They're dirt for, like, hundreds of yards.
Ways. Yeah.
And ice. So, and there's, like, little stumps and stuff that they've cut off on them hills, like this big, solid. And I'm just watching everybody spin out. Like, and it's weird to see people spin out. They're not even crashing. They're spinning out. I was like, I got to hit my lines right. I got to get to the right spots, check up, and drive through the spots
where you can to gain momentum.
Gaining them shelves, just like we do in the trees. Like being aggressive, getting up on top of that shelf, and then like getting the drive for the next one.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the class. Same thing. I get to the end of the class. Very few people had made it. And I'm worried about my sled still. So now I kind of know the program. Get on the sled. Go to get up the same thing, take off. Same thing, first start. Lays down again. And I was like, God dang it, you got to be kidding me. Get it out. Now I'm kind of ready for it and throttle around it, and it's worse this time. And so I get up to the first catwalk, same thing. I just drive up to the first catwalk. Same thing, deep breath, look up the hill, and it's nasty. Like, it's walls, you're bouncing skis, standing skis up on. And I had, like, just finding that right speed that you're standing them skis up on, and it's not just tipping you into the trench. It's standing the ski up on it where it'll, like, your sled's driving forward fast enough where it's going to drive through it, but not so fast that you're going to get flung upside down.
Yep.
So same thing. I get up to that 27, 28, 29 where everybody's spinning out.
And it's still the same deal. You got to go around 27, drop the front end down.
They straightened it up a little bit. They moved 28 left.
Okay.
They moved 28 left. And I get up, I see this thing right at the orange fence, right on the far left side. When I was watching the class and the track breakdown, there was a couple guys that was the most defined shelf on the hill. There was a couple guys that literally spun all the way up to get up on top of that shelf. And then they got on that shelf and they had snow and a clean line up the left side. And like it as in clean, like I think we could pull up a tape of Keith on that left side doing about 80. He got up that shelf and he was super aggressive and gained that shelf, and he was able to get a drive, like same thing, crested the top of that shelf slow and was able to get a drive up that left side all the way out the top super fast. So I'm like, that was my plan. And like, that's all I'm thinking. I'm like, get to 20, like at 26, look left, at 26, look left. I get 26 and I look left and I see it, and it's just an ice luge, like super steep up onto that shelf. And I should have, there was one bump where I checked up and then tried to get the drive off it and get up at it, where I should have probably just hopefully held it pinned and got a wheelie. That was tough. You can't wheelie on ice. So you can really plant that ski and get screwed from it. But so I'm looking up, I get over and I'm going up that edge, and it's going slow. And I was like, I saw two nubs like this right at the crest of that thing of stumps. And I'm like, if that track grabs one of them,
I need this stump.
If I get that stump, it'll grab it and it'll grab lugs and I'll get on top of that shelf. And from there, I'm looking at the top.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got it. And I literally must have tickled that stump with them lugs, and it starts to come backwards. And it's only like probably a 30-foot shelf. And I had watched like Carl Kuster and these guys have troubles on this hill and literally slide down backwards. If you keep that sled running, hands on the handlebars and keep that tether on, you can take off again. I watched Carl Kuster literally keep his tether on, give himself a ski pull back down where he had spun back down to pull that front end down, get a drive, and he went out the top, and he was the first qualifier.
Wow.
Like in his class, and I don't know what class that was, but
yeah,
it was a master's class of some sort. Anyway, so he'd done that, and so I'm like, I start spinning out. I'm like, it ain't over yet. I'll be all right. Because I had it under control. I had my left foot on the ice. I had my right foot on the running board, and it's sliding on its side. And I planned on like coming back down. I'm looking over my shoulder. Sled slides. It stops. And I've got both hands on the handlebars yet. My right foot slipped off the running board. Sled's still running. And I like go to pull myself back up to look over the hood, and I'm on snow. Like good snow, and I had another line to the left. And like 4 people slide into the front of my snowmobile. And I'm like, get out of the way, get out of the way. And I hear an official, and I hear an official over my shoulder yell, you're done. And I'm like, I'm not done. The sled's still running. They're like, they touched your snowmobile. And I'm like, I didn't ask them to. Like, I'm stopped here. Hands never came off my handlebars. Tether's still on. Sled's running. And I mean, not to say like it would have worked or anything, but it's just frustrating. Like it's just really frustrating to like be told that you have to turn out on a line. Never been told that before, or like that you can't have another chance at it. It's really frustrating too. Like you fail. When I fail, like I'm gonna make 100 laps until I get it. I don't care what it takes or what A-arm I have to rip off to do it. So like I'm stopped there, and my sled's still running, and I'm like revving it up, and then all these people step out of the way, and they're like, sorry, and the official's just screaming at me behind me.
You're done.
You're done. Shut the sled off. You're done. And I'm like, and I didn't obviously have any ground to stand on. I don't know the rules. I don't know how any of it works. And I was like, I'm fine. And so I'm like, well, okay, I shut the sled off. And it's funny. These people are like, trying to tell me how to get my sled on to get my front end down, and they're like trying to tip it down with 2 skis, and like they're just trying to help, but like I'm like, I get like 1,000 snowmobiles unstuck a day. Like I tip it all the way on the side panel and like pull the ski down, and then they're trying to like when I'm trying to take off, they're like trying to pull my sled down flat, and I'm like, don't do it, stop doing it, I'm fine, just let me take off from here, I'm totally fine. Like I should have just like turned left. Yeah. But anyway, I
got in trouble one year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They told me don't. I blew like the third gate. I missed the third gate.
Yeah, it's like you come too far, spend too much money. I'm trying.
Like, I'm going up, and I don't care if I get kicked out forever. I'm going up this hill.
And that's where I was like, I'm coming down the hill, and I'm just like frustrated. And I'm just like, I've never had that type of frustration before because I always just looked forward to trying it again. Yeah. And now it's like they're telling you don't have another chance. And it's like, for one, it'd be one thing if I yard sailed and crashed or ran over a gate or did something, but I felt like I still had a chance. So I'm like kind of upset about it. Yeah. And I'm like, God dang it. But I'm still pumped on my other class. And I'm just like, that really sucks. So I'm coming down the hill, and I get back down to the pits, and Darren hadn't watched it. Because he was
just so you guys know, we keep referring to Darren. So Darren is with Polaris.
Yep.
He's our buddy. He puts a lot of effort and takes a lot of pride in his boys at Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, he is one guy that wants to win, and he will do anything
at all costs.
At all costs. So I get back down, and like the next class, I don't remember what was up next. But he had another rider that he was getting ready, so I didn't really get a chance to talk to him. I ended up getting teched or something, so I was hung up in tech with behind a bunch of snowmobiles because I didn't even know if like I got a high mark high enough to still qualify.
Yeah.
So they held me up in tech because they didn't know either that the results hadn't come back. So I'm like kind of sitting there, I'm like trying to figure out like how does that work because I had no idea, and I find out that like in the next class I watched a guy get a rerun because people touched his sled before he was done too. Like, and I was like, so then and Andy saw it later. He saw it, and he had a next class, or he was helping one of his brothers or something, and he's like, dude, did you ask for a rerun on that? I'm like, no. And he's like, he's like, was your sled still running? And I'm like, yeah. But whatever, it was whatever. I didn't qualify in that class. I ended up, I don't know where I was, but I didn't qualify in that class. But now, like, my main concern is like, I gotta get my sled to run.
Yep.
So put a logger on it, and I mean it's late now, and plan on because next day's finals, and I'm in a 900 mod, and.
So you put a logger on it, and where did you go somewhere to go ride it?
Yeah.
Oh, that night?
No. My plan was the next morning because I tore a bunch of stuff apart, looked everything over, kind of.
Didn't find anything.
Didn't find anything.
Oh, frustrating.
So
you got to get on the snow.
Got to get it on the snow and try it. So I get up early the next morning and in the dark, and I run up a trail, and it's super icy. So I go run up, and I'm literally just driving up the trail trying to keep my sled cool.
Yeah.
And it's impossible. Dragging both feet. I mean, stopping half a mile to dig the track in, trying to find enough snow. Snow is super low. So get up to a point where there's like some bumps to actually be able to hold it pinned up a little draw. And I literally pin it for 2 seconds. And all I feel is really bad stuff coming from the back end of the snowmobile.
Oh, no.
And I knew what happened. I blew my rear bogey. I hit literally 2 bumps, and it was so icy it blew my rear bogey because I didn't have the right bogeys. All those guys have that big aluminum hub that they bolt the bogeys to, so they can't do this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find one. I couldn't get one in time. So I blow the back bogeys off. I'm like, well, this really isn't good.
So this is Sunday morning finals. You qualify for Jackson. You get a chance to go win the trophy. And here you are Sunday morning with a broken snowmobile.
And trying to get back for riders meeting at, I think, 7 or 8 or something. I don't remember when it is. I'm trying to get back with this broken snowmobile with no rear bogeys on it, so my track's just running around my rails.
Oh, no.
You know what that sounds like.
Yeah.
I'm going 5 miles an hour now at the most.
Now the sled's really
now
pissed.
I really can't keep it cool.
Yeah.
So trying to pack snow on it, trying to dig that track in with a track that's, 4 inches too loose. Get the sled back to the truck. Have a heck of a time getting it in the back of the truck because it wouldn't drive up a hill.
Yeah.
Get the sled in the truck. I see the sun coming up, and I'm like, this is not good. I'm not going to make it back in time. Come flying through town, like, trying to drive back down to get to riders meeting, and I'm, like, at riders meeting, like, I'm like, I got to go fix my sled. I need to get my sled fixed. So I run back to the Darren, same thing. Darren calls me, and he's like, how'd it go? And I'm like, didn't even get to test it, blew the rear bogeys off it. He's like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So run back to the trailer, stick new bogeys in it, tension the track, get the sled on a trailer to get pulled up to the starting line. And the sled's sitting in the pits, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like,
it's sitting. So
I feel so helpless.
This is terrible, right?
I can't do anything.
Your sled didn't run on Saturday for some unknown reason, right? It's worked flawless. Saturday it doesn't work. You try to go test it Sunday morning, blow the wheels off. Now you don't have time to go back up on the hill to test it. It's in the pits, broken.
Sitting there. And I'm just like, well, I guess it doesn't matter. Like, just need to go through, do the same thing, prepare the same way, and hope it works out. And like Sunday was nasty. Like
again, it's that freeze thaw deal, right? So for you guys who don't know, and this podcast is gonna be longer than our normal ones.
Oh yeah.
But that's all right. People dig it. So it's that time of the year where during the day the sun is out and it is so beautiful, and when it gets slushy, the racers are having fun, it's all good, and things are really fun Saturday afternoon, right? The course is cool and it's rough, but there's some traction. And then Sunday morning comes and that slush is now solid freaking ice.
So, but I'm 900 mod, so I'm towards the end of the day.
Yeah.
So watching all these first classes go up, and the hill is just literally rocks and dirt. It's just so broken down. And, it was the same type of thing. Like, where normally, like, on finals day, I would say, like, just from watching in the past, classes are, like, I would say 25% don't make it. And otherwise, most people are going out the top. And where now, like, I would say this year, 25% were going out the top, maybe. And it was so funny watching it. And they were doing so many gate moves between classes because it was breaking down so much, and they don't want to destroy this hill either.
Sure.
So they're moving the gates as much as they can, trying to keep the hill in good shape. And, like, so it's the same thing. It's that breakdown of when the track gets fast and then when it gets worse again. And so same thing, riding the chairlift. We got to ride the chairlift a bunch with Keith, making laps. And, I made laps with Sam and Andy.
Keith is busy on Sunday. Because he's qualified in all his classes.
He's got 5 classes on Sunday.
Yeah,
he's got 5 classes on Sunday. And, I get to ride the chairlift with him, which is pretty cool. Just listening to the way he looks at the hill. And it was funny, like, I rode the chairlift before any races with him that morning, and watching him and, like, where he knew he wasn't – I was looking at the line at the moment. He was looking at the line when that hill breaks down, and he knew how the hill was going to break down. And he saw some stuff that I was just like, huh. Like,
that's cool.
So, and it was like slivers of snow and like slivers of this and like little marks that you
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's what he was looking for. He wasn't looking for the big picture. He knew where the big picture was going to drive. Like, So, listening to all that, same exact program, like waiting for the
Sunday's
race.
brutal. Like,
because there's a ton of people there.
Yeah.
It's busy. You're hoping, you're just like, come on, son, thaw that thing out, thing out. And then finally, around noon, the hill really starts to soften up, and people are like, there gets to be bigger holes, and the track gets even rougher. And they dropped us down into the gully, and you drive back left, and they made like a straight side hill.
Yeah,
now
I remember.
through the rock garden. Like they brought 27 and 28 up to where you had to go literally side hill through the rock garden.
Yeah.
And turn left and drive straight up through the rocks. Where before we were able to like jump through them rocks and get left. Now it's straight through them. And everybody was just like, in the morning, the gates were there. They move all the gates first thing in the morning. And everybody's just like looking at the hill and they're like, are you
No,
kidding me?
they didn't put that gate
They
there.
literally put 27 in the rocks on the left, and they put 28 on the right side of the rocks, and then you had to go straight up the rocks. And everybody's like, wow. So same thing, takes a long time before anybody makes it out. And I mean, just watching everybody's line choices and what they were going with was pretty cool. Luke's another guy that's super creative, taking some lines that nobody else is taking. And, like, I don't know, coming into my race then, same thing. I think I was towards the back of the pack again. Same thing. I was like, and I was happy for it. No, that time I think it was like 18 out of 25, I think is what's in finals. And I was like 18th, and I was like, same thing. Like Andy, I think was like 10th, and Andy spins out in the rocks. And I was like, oh shit. Like,
if he
this
didn't
is
make it.
not good.
Yeah.
Like, and he had so getting a driver on 28 was super tough because there was a lot of people going like fast through 27, which would set them up poorly to get a driver on that corner. That's what I was coming up with in my head. Like, I'm like, these people are going too fast around 27, and it's screwing them to get around 28 fast. So I'm looking at the hill. I'm like, I'm gonna go super slow around 27 again and get that sled low and try to instead of come to 28 and have to just apex that corner tight and get a straight drive to the hill. I'm gonna try to come low on 28 and cut that corner across and get a drive up them rocks. So same thing, take off, and the sled's not running good again, and it's even worse. Like now it's like takes a second to pop and do its thing before it'll even start to spit and sputter.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a rev limiter. And so I get up to 27 again, just fine, and it's gnarly, like just bouncing skis off both sides of that trench. I get up to get a really sweet drive out of the bottom, out of the gully, and I go up that hill, and it really lays down on me coming into 27. I was like,
Come on, girl.
Like, come on. And I get around 27, same thing. I drop that front end and dang near stop. And I'm below the tracks in snow, which was good. And my plan was to kind of cut that corner over the berm and then try to stay left tight to that flag. And I go to take off, and the sled's spitting and sputtering, and there's huge boulders to the right. And everybody was high marking at them boulders,
Right.
you know, like they were getting up on them boulders
And
at
then
that
sliding
wall,
down.
and they were sliding back
Yep.
down. And I'm like, I'm coming around that corner at 27 or 28 where I watched a ton of people spin out, and I'm doing like 30, looking at the top again. And the sled's still laying down on me. And I don't I maybe should have done something like a full counter steer and tug, but I think I would have just slid and so I'm like eyeing up these two massive boulders, and there's a little bit of snow between them. And then I'm going right for them. I have the speed to get over them. And I go, and I'm like, I got to hit them with the track. It's going to launch me forward. And there was a ton of snow up on top because nobody had gotten over the boulders.
Right.
They were all spinning out to the left of them.
We got video of this, so
This is pretty good.
We'll be inserting all of this for you guys watching on YouTube.
And I'm like, there's no, these boulders are huge. And I'm like, I'm not letting off. There's no way. Hopefully it bounces right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you just hope for a good bounce. And,
You bounced all right.
And I end up, I didn't get to that sliver. If I would have wheelied through that sliver of snow between the two rocks, it probably would have kicked me like that and got me forward. And I would have landed and been able to take off. And it ends up, I hit that rock on the left, and the bulkhead hits it first. So it hit the stand. It doesn't hit it on the track and buck me forward like I was expecting. It hits the bulkhead and stands that sled up, and that track grabbed that rock so hard. I mean, that snow flaps 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
The sled's vertical. That snow flaps 2 feet off the snow, and I'm straight up and down on that rock. And I'm looking over my left shoulder, and when you look over your left or over your right shoulder on that hill, if you look over your shoulder on that hill, you're literally looking at town that's 1,500 feet below you. And I'm straight up and down, and I'm like, I'm not letting go of the sled. So I actually get the sled to fall back to my right in a re-entry, but it's so icy that the back end starts to chase me, and I get away from the sled. And the sled it gets on 2 skis, and it is hauling ass down the hill. I was like, oh, well, this is going to be good. And it catches a ski and just starts freaking rolling and rolling and rolling. And I'm just like, I think the hill was still, like, everybody was like, oh, right when it happened. And then I'm just like, everything's kind of silent. I'm like, woo! And everybody freaks out. And I was like, and it was pretty sweet. Dude, your ski
tip.
If the timing would have been right on the chairlift,
you could have hit someone.
Would have hit the chairlift.
Yeah, yeah. So this video, guys, and we probably, again, you'll see it. When you hit that rock, like, it sucked, dude. You came around that corner, and that sled you needed the trajectory for your front end to be just like 2 degrees to the left.
Oh man, I don't know. When I came over that little berm, I should have probably landed in a literally 2 inches more of a counter steer, and I should have been a little bit further away from the sled, and that sled maybe would have turned. But that sled just, I didn't do enough input, and that sled started towards them rocks, and like at that point there was no.
You're committed.
I needed the drive.
Yeah.
If I'd have let off, I would have just spun out. So I'm like, well, we'll hit these things and see how far up I can land. And I literally got a mark. 20 feet above that rock.
Yeah.
And everybody was spinning out at the rocks or below, and I'm like, and there was like literally, I don't know how many high marks, like 3/4 of the class's high marks were at the rock, and I'm like, I hope I landed above them rocks, because I couldn't really, you don't remember really. And then like, I let out a big cheer, and everybody's cheering, and I get like down at all the hill help, and like the people at the fence and stuff are like, that was insane, are you all right? And I'm like, I do that like 20 times a day. It's just not in the ice. Like, that's a pretty normal crash for me.
Yeah.
And I get back, and I was like, after, in my head, like, now it's over, right? Like, that was all I had. And I'm after watching all those guys do it, and like, they're so bummed, because it's a big deal to them, right? Like, this is what they do for a living all winter. They put all this work into it. And like, Andy was bummed. He spun out. And, like, Andy was bummed. He spun out. All these guys are just bumming, and I was like, I'm smiling ear to ear. And then I just wadded it in the rocks. Like, my sled's broken. I need another bulkhead after the first one. I need another bulkhead. And I'm like, my ski's all bent up. My handlebars are bent. And I'm just like, I'm pumped. I'm like, it's over. Like, there's so much. I put so much pressure on myself, like, going into it and like throughout the deal, because I don't want to, like, I don't go into things just to do them. Like,
no.
I went there, and I was looking for, like, I never told anybody this, because even before the race, you, like, sat me down in the shop, and you're like, you're going to race against, like, this would be like you hopping on that dirt bike and going to race, like, Ken Roxon and, like, Eli Tomac. And I was like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. If you're supposed to tell me I don't belong there or what, but
that's and that's not what I meant, right?
Yeah, but like for me, like, I was just like, throughout all this, like, going into it and all this practice and stuff, I'm like just wishing like I would have been more prepared. But like at the same time, I'm like, I am prepared. This is what I do. It's just a different animal.
Yeah, and I'll come back to. I'll let you finish that. But what my point was you need to go there. Like you do, right? Mm-hmm. You went there knowing I have a shot. Like,
well, yeah. In my head,
you got to be confident.
In my head,
right?
Like, it sounds stupid, but like in my head, I like honestly thought I could. And with the right, that's the thing, with the right bounces and the right stuff and doing the right things, like things can happen. And I'm like, I'm confident in my abilities on a snowmobile. Otherwise, you can't ride them. Like, if you, that's like right here. Like, people talk about all the things in the snowmobile and the like things you need to be able to like know, and how strong and how good a shape you need to be in, and how good of a sled you need. It's nothing without this. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter how good you are, how good your sled is. Like, if you don't believe in yourself and like tell yourself you can do it, you're gonna fail every single time.
It's why
anything you do.
It's why Keith is where he is at. Like, obviously Keith is a very gifted rider, and he has good equipment, but Keith goes into it knowing that he's going to go win. And the other thing that is amazing about Keith is, so Keith got through that head wall.
Yeah.
And made it.
Yep.
Keith has probably not made Jackson like 3 times.
And, you know, one of his, and I don't know what class it was that day, between 27 and 28, he got around 27 and that front end hung up on him, and he pulled that front end down. It was the one class that he got, I don't remember what happened, but he got hung up on it, and he pulled his front end down too. He did the same thing and still made it. He got around 28, and it was slow.
But he made it.
He made it, and that's all that mattered, because I think, like, honestly, 4 or 5 people in that class made it, and he still got a really good time. But he literally got off his snowmobile, knew what he needed to do to set his sled up, and he still made it out the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, like, the mental side of it, like, it's a relief to be done, kind of. Like, to have it all over with, it's like, oh, God, the sled, now it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to try to go get a sled running. I don't need to try to overnight another set of parts or whatever. I don't need another track. Like, sled's busted up. I don't really care. I'm like, oh, that's good. Like, now, like, I'm looking forward to, like, just kind of being a little bit normal and going into town or whatever and getting something to eat and whatever. And I get down and, like, all of the people, like, talking to, like, Dan and, like, Budge was there, and, like, all those guys are like, dude, you did so good. This is so awesome to see you come here and, like, do this. And I'm like, I'm still happy, and I'm like, it was like, the experience was amazing and getting to do it. But, like, in my head, I'm just like, I'm already thinking about next year.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm like just, like, thinking about all the things that I did wrong and, like, thinking about the mistakes and, like, wanting another chance already. You know what I mean? And, like, those guys are all like, good job, and, like, you yourself are your biggest critic. So I'm just trying to, like, I'm still pumped and, like, happy to be there, and I'm still like, oh, I wish I had done this, wish I would have done that. Oh, I'm going to do this next time. I'm going to, like, do all these things and, like, get back down. And I ended up, like, then, like, the results come out, and I was, like, my high mark was, I got 8th in an open mod, and I was like, that's not what I wanted. I really wanted a top 5. And I'm like, I mean, that's actually pretty good.
It's pretty decent.
Yeah, like, looking at it. And so, and then I ride the chairlift up the hill for all the king runs and, like, all the, like, I think that was about all that was left. Go up to watch the king runs, and I mean, the hill was so nasty, and just getting to grab sleds. Me and Cody, that was a part I skipped to. Cody Monroe, we had a bet going too, because we were both in the same classes, and he came into 28, same gate, and he got bucked hard right on Andy's sled, and Andy's old mod, and got bucked hard right. And he didn't make it, so I made it, and I claimed $1 from him. So I was pretty pumped on that.
Did pretty good with the dollar bets on Jackson.
I did, yeah. And anyway, like, just all of it was super cool, and the amount of help and how everyone was so easy going with it, and, like, so willing to help, like, as I'm just this, like, guest there. And
I think, Kyle, this is how I pictured wrapping this whole thing up is, my goal for you was to earn the respect, right?
And that's funny you say that, because, like, going in, there was some, like, other people there, and I heard from, like, people in the crowd, because, like, my brother's walking around, and, like, he's not a part of the snowmobile industry at all, and doesn't know anyone there, and, like, he's walking through the crowd, and, like, he was like, it was pretty funny, like, hearing some of the other, like, big riders be like, oh, another one of Burandt's guys. We all know how this goes. Like, people that were saying that.
Yep.
And I ended up, like, doing pretty good. And then, like, I don't know. Yeah, that part was cool. And then it was cool to see Cody, my brother's Cody. It was cool to hear him be like, how pumped people were for me to be like, I'm not a racer, like, I'm not a part of that crowd at all.
Yeah.
And, like, to hear how pumped people were in the stands, he's like, dude, you, like, the only time, like, people cheered way louder for you, because like, when Keith goes, they just know he's going to go out the top, where when I'm coming there, they don't know what to expect.
We got a wild card here. We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And that's, I used words like, earn the respect and make me proud, and, like, all of those things. And you did exactly that. And that's where, with all of those guys, and that's what I love about the hill climb community, is literally everyone will bend over backwards for the person that you're trying to beat. and you don't want to, you're not, so, there's a lot of pressure to not let yourself down, your family down, your boss down, all these people.
Pressure. Yeah.
Right. And that's your relief you're talking about on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
here you go. I gave it my all, and it's hilarious, right? Like the crowd goes silent and they're like, is he dead? And then it's and it's
over. Yeah.
It's like, it's like, a big weight off your shoulders. It's rewarding. You did all you could do. It's been a crazy week. We've talked about this.
This started 6 days before this.
2.5 hours, right? We've talked about this, and now it's been 6 days of no sleep. Like
6 days of like trying to be a hill climber against these guys that have done it for years and have all this stuff to do it. Do it every weekend. And
you did good.
And it went good, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what I love about you. Like I am proud to have you associated with me, and you're a part of this company. And when you walk into the room at Jackson, like you earned your respect. And I think that's what's cool about year one. I think this year, obviously, that like you were already, as you're sliding on your butt down.
I'm already like, I'm like at that point, like after
I'm gonna prepare for 8 days next. No, I'm just kidding.
But like that's exactly true. Like when I'm sliding down on my butt.
I'm already picking up parts.
Oh
shit, there's my ski.
Yeah, one of the announcers was like, he's gonna need a bucket to get that thing back to Minnesota. But so I'm sliding down, and I'm already like, even like going into it, like after them first couple of runs, I was already like, I'm really gonna know what to be ready for. I'm gonna do so many things different for next year, like sled wise, like setup wise, actually knowing what to get a sled ready for, how to set up my sled, seeing the track and knowing what to practice for.
Yeah,
like that track's a lot different than what I practiced, and I don't know, just. There's a lot of that I wasn't even like, I was already looking forward to the next year and being ready for it.
Yeah, and we'll wrap this up, but I think you, as you're walking down, you're feeling relieved.
Yeah.
But you have all your peers, right? The guys that have been helping you this week.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Good job. Darren calls me that night. He's like, Cal, he did pretty good. I'm like, yeah, he did. And I was watching it on the live stream. They do an incredible job being able to watch it on the live stream. I was at home, and just cheering and jumping up and down, and it was awesome to hear, because it can go the other way too. It can be, things don't go right and you don't have a good run, or you're nervous and you don't perform the way you should, and like that's embarrassing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to do better. And you walked away not feeling like that. You walked away feeling content.
Yeah,
right?
Content. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Content and just looking just ready.
Ready for the next.
The biggest thing though is like, even though like it's over, you're still like, God, I want to hit that thing again.
I know.
Like
yeah.
at the end of me and Cody were talking, because Cody had some regret too, because he screwed up his runs, and he's like, what would you pay right now for one more run at that hill? And I'm like, and then everybody was kind of standing around at this point, and like,
they can't stop
and
us
they're
all.
They're just all like, they should literally start a class, like some sort of LCQ or like some sort of like Bush League championship, where like everybody that has regrets just buys back into this class at the end to get one more shot at the hill. Because it's like that, man. It's like in the backcountry, you can just hit something as long and hard as you want, where there, it's like you're literally just staring at something that you can't have.
Well, and what's so tough is, and we can talk about this forever, but what's so tough, and I remember Cody's run specifically when he got stood up on 28 and literally just had to turn right.
Mm-hmm.
You're just so pissed off, and you're like, damn it, dude. Like, I sat on my ass for, like, I was here at the writers' meeting at 7 a.m. It is now 3:30, and I been on my snowmobile for 52 seconds and I'm going home now.
Yeah.
And you're so pissed off that you just made a mistake.
Yep.
That's I'll be honest, that's what I didn't like about hill climbing.
Yeah.
You had to be like, we're not perfect in the backcountry, and we still make it to the top.
Yeah.
And you have to be perfect at Jackson to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't just drop around
Yeah.
one different gate. And just like the help from everyone, like Seth Wilson, like a guy that I didn't even know before this race is like pulling skis out of his trailer. He's like, here, try these skis. If it's icy, you need to run these. And like just giving me a set of skis to try. And I mean, like everybody, like all the advice and help from all of them is just was really cool. And just kind of seeing, like, I can't imagine the pressure on like Keith and Andy and Justin and Luke and like Brandon and all those guys that like they're expected to, like, Polaris comes in and they set these guys up because they're
with
there
everything
to win.
Yeah.
They're there to win. And if like expectations or a class is lost, it's not a good thing. They're there to win.
Yeah.
And like the pressure that they have to deal with is a whole nother element. Like I'm there, like I got nothing to lose. Like I showed up on my own stuff to ride, like ended up getting way more help than I would have ever expected or asked for, which is kind of like a guilty feeling, but like, and just imagining the pressure on those guys to perform is like an element that they have to deal with.
It's a whole nother level there,
Yeah.
right? It's, it is contracts, and if you don't perform, there's another guy waiting, right?
That's maybe did good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this has been enjoyable. And you know what I got to do? I got to sit here and listen instead of me talking.
I kind of got carried away there probably, huh?
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Another big thanks to Arctic FX for sponsoring this podcast. That's pretty cool. Kyle, I'll just say this for everybody. I think we are all as excited as you are for this next season. I think, we're going to, we got a better plan from a sled standpoint and practice standpoint and preparation standpoint. And I think that's going to be fun. Yeah. So, and that's the biggest thing is you need to have it be fun. If it's not fun, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's where, seeing that with some people, I could see.
You can see it.
Yeah. You
right?
can see it. And
Yep.
It doesn't work.
Well, when you go in mentally defeated already, there's no chance.
Yep.
Yeah. So awesome job. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2-part series. We're going to put some content, some video content and some pictures and all that stuff of Kyle yarding himself up on the YouTube podcast. So check that out. And everyone have a Merry Christmas, and we will be back after the New Year. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Nice job, Kyle.